Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Unfinished Memoirs. Today we've got a really special episode for you today. As you may know, I'm personally on a very positive high after yesterday's news of the US election, but I just want to first say thank you to the Mukti online channel who is showcasing us today. It is produced by the Bongobondhuo Sangskritik Jote London branch, and all our technical guidance has been given by our coordinator Nazur Islam Okib, who has been incredible as always in the build up to this show, and who will be throughout the show. Please remember to like, comment, and share on Facebook and YouTube, which is the two websites and platforms that we're broadcasting on. We really appreciate seeing your comments come up, especially when they're so encouraging while the readers are reading, especially our young talents. So we have two young talents for you today, as always, and a adult guest as well as a very important and special guest at the end. Today's going to be a really special one. Just to warn you, I mean, not really warn you, it's a bit of a treat. We're probably going to go over time because we've got really special segments by our young talents today who have gone above and beyond for today's episode. And I just want to also start introducing our guest. So today he's came back. He was in the first episode with me. He's one of my esteemed young writers. I've worked with him many times in the years. He's also a very experienced public speaker. We've done very many events together. So my first guest is Kazi Maknoon, as well as Afra Kondukar. Hi, Maknoon. Afra Kondukar. Afra is in year 8. She's 12 years old and she's part of the South End High School for Girls, but she is also a freedom fighter's granddaughter. So she also has a lot of experience in the family and a lot of rich family heritage. Hi, Afra. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Hi. And also we have a very special adult guest, our senior guest, Mr. Kamal Qureshi. He is a political analyst and he has had a lot of experience in community and political activism. He's just joining us now. As always, you know, we get technical problems, but he's just started joining us. Hello, how are you?
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting us, and thank you to those two young talents joining with us. Yeah,
we've got a great caliber of guests today. And as always, I just want to take a moment to say thank you to all my guests who have joined us today. But also, you know, today feels very special for me. So the reason why we created this platform, thank you to everyone who's already started commenting. That's incredible. Thank you. Remember to like, comment, and share to various different audiences. But the reason why I decided to create a platform like this and a show like this, because I really wanted somewhere, you know, after the year that we've had in 2020, to have a really positive, constructive place where young British Bangladeshi talents can come together, as well as people of the old generation, where it's two generations coming together, where we can have really thought-provoking and honest conversations about Bangladesh. But also today, and as with every episode, where this is where we really dive into the Unfinished Memoirs by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, which is an unprecedented historical document where it's his personal diaries and his personal thoughts. Now, as you all know, and whatever your political affiliation may be, you know, I'm going to assume that a lot of you here who are watching this are going to be quite progressive. I don't think a lot of you are going to be, you know, anyone who's super conservative and doesn't want social change or anything like that, because this is a show where we talk about social change very thoroughly. But, you know, today, I don't know, whatever your political affiliation may be, I really believe that today's a really special day, because yesterday, obviously, we got the US election results. And after the year that we have had, and the reason why I wanted to do a show like this was because we needed a place where we could all come together and feel like we're making some real positive change. And yesterday, as you all will know, unless you're living in a mountain somewhere and you don't have any access to news, but then you wouldn't be able to watch this, Joe Biden was elected as the president-elect for America. And the reason why I really wanted to bring this up, and I was hesitant on not bringing it up, but I think we have to talk about it. The last 4 years obviously have been very difficult for anyone who is in a minority or he is not a part of the conservative white population, wherever you may be. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up, because I remember very specifically on the day that Donald Trump was elected president, and it was 6 a.m. And I remember this very well, and I really want to talk about this because I'm going to talk about something else. I remember it being 6 a.m. and I was living with my flatmates at the time, and my flatmates in the house was deadly quiet. And I remember it being 6 a.m. It's been about 1 hour after he's been nominated, elected president. And I'm in my bedroom and I am just crying. And the reason why I'm crying is because I went on social media and I am just reading tweets about hijabi, Muslim, Bangladeshi women or South Asian women who are being assaulted in the street 1 hour after Donald Trump was elected. I really feel like yesterday was the time when we could just breathe. And I wanted to talk about it, but I'm going to read out something that Van Jones, a CNN correspondent, said yesterday. Now, this video has gone viral on Instagram and Facebook and stuff, so it's very likely that if you're on that platforms, you've probably seen what Van Jones said. But the reason why Van Jones really stood out for me was when the Muslim ban 4 years ago came into place. Van Jones, who is, as far as I'm aware, he's not Muslim, but he went on air and he really stood up for South Asian people, primarily the Muslim population in America who are being torn apart by their families. And he was in tears. 4 years ago, he was absolutely in tears and he really stood up for them. And this is what he said yesterday. And I wanted to read it out loud for anyone who hasn't heard this, because I think it's really important, because I'm well aware that there are many parents who are watching this. There may be young people watching this, and if you are, hi, if you've not been a guest on this show, reach out to me. We'd love to have you. But I'm well aware that a lot of senior people will be watching this who are parents. Thank you, everyone who's been commenting. And for parents, the biggest thing that we want is I'm not a parent, but I know what my parents want. We want to be able to leave this world knowing that our children are really cared for and they've got a place of power here, wherever it may be. So I wanted to read out what Van Jones said yesterday on the CNN after Biden was elected. So he said, "It's easier to be a parent this morning. It's easier to be a dad. It's easier to tell your kids that character matters. It matters. That telling the truth matters. Being a good person matters. And it's easier for a lot of people. If you're Muslim in this country, you don't have to worry about the president doesn't want you here. If you're an immigrant, you don't have to worry about the president being happy that babies are being snatched away or sending back dreamers back for no reason. This is vindication for a lot of people who have really suffered. The I can't breathe with George Floyd. That wasn't just George Floyd. That was a lot of people who felt they couldn't breathe. Every day you're waking up and you're getting all these tweets and you go to the store and you're afraid of all these people who are afraid of showing their racism, who are getting nastier and nastier to you. And you're worried about your kids and you're worried about your sister. Can she go to Walmart and just get back into her car without somebody saying something to her? And you spend so much of your life energy just trying to hold it together. And this is a big deal for us, just to get some peace and have a chance to have a reset. And the character of the country matters. And being a good man matters. And I just want my sons to look at this, and it's easier to do it the cheap way and get away with stuff, but it comes back around and it's a good day for this country. And I think that it's so important that we're doing shows like this, and I want it to be a place where the young talents feel that they can say what they need to say and they speak their truth. Because like he said, if being a good man matters and character matters, and Bongobondhuo was a good man and his character really mattered. I sometimes wonder what it would be like if he was alive today and he'd seen the last 4 years happen, And I just really want this to be a place where we are positive, we are constructive, and we come out of this. I want everyone after the hour is over to feel better and not to feel helpless like I did 4 years ago. I feel so empowered today. I feel so good. And I'm really happy that for just maybe like a week before we get back into work and we get back to creating better things with the new administration, that we can just breathe and realize that the human spirit is so resilient. And I'm just so excited to see what the younger generation and the underdogs of society will do for us today. So on that very deep, very emotional note, I'm going to get on with the show. And first off, we have Mahnoon.
Hey.
Hi, Mahnoon. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, I'm really happy you're back. So Mahnoon has been on various events with me, and he always goes above and beyond with what he does. So Mahnoon, I'm gonna let you take it away.
All right, thank you. As soon as Pakistan was created, political conspiracy became rife. In particular, a conspiracy against Mr. Sahrawadi was hatched in Delhi. This was because what we in East Bengal would get as our share came to more than what the people of the Punjab, Sindh, the frontier province, and Balochistan would get. After all, our combined population was greater than theirs. Mr. Sohrawardi's personality, uncommon political acumen, wisdom and efficiency made many uneasy. This was because these qualities would make him want to be the Prime Minister of Pakistan in the future, and nobody would be able to oppose him. Mr. Jinnah himself loved Mr. Sohrawardi. These were the reasons the conspirators felt that he would have to be cut down to size immediately. On the one hand, Calcutta was torn apart by communal riots. On the other, the Partition Council had been convened. The Congress had formed a shadow cabinet in Calcutta. Behind the scenes, people were plotting to remove Mr. Sohrawardi from the scene and install Khawaja Nazimuddin in his place. Nobody seemed to think that it was necessary to hold elections in the Punjab, even though too it had been partitioned. Although Nawab Mamdot came from East Punjab, he was made Chief Minister of West Punjab. Even though Liaquat Ali Khan was from India, he was made Prime Minister of Pakistan. But because Mr. Sohrawardi was from West Bengal, he was told that he would be able to stand for elections only in East Pakistan. And yet the MLAs of the whole of Bengal had unanimously made him their leader, and he had been their Prime Minister. It was in this situation that orders came from Delhi for elections to be held in our part of the subcontinent. What was Mr. Sohrawardi supposed to do? Govern, protect the Muslims of his region, or busy himself with the elections? He had to go to Sylhet too for the referendum. He sent thousands of workers like us to Sylhet for this. Moreover, it was he who did most of the fundraising for this purpose. Mr. S.M. Isfani had given a lot of money as a treasurer of Bengal Muslim League, something that I can attest to. This was because I was present at the meeting when he discussed the issue with Mr. Sohrawardi at 40 Theatre Road. When we went to Sylhet and plunged headlong into the referendum campaign, Mr. Sohrawardi accompanied us. I met him at a huge public meeting in Karimganj. I had given a speech on the occasion. Maulana Turka Bagish, Manik Mia, the editor of the daily Ittifaq, Fazlul Haq, and 500 party workers reached Sylhet in due time. The Sylhet Referendum Committee did not have to do anything out of the way for us. Its only responsibility was to guide us to where we were supposed to be working and then aid us to reach that destination. Mr. Sohrawardi had made all the arrangements to meet our expenses. We didn't have to ask for help from anyone. Mr. Shamsul Haq joined us from Dhaka with many of his men. At Mr. Sohrawardi's request, the philanthropist R.P. Shah sent a few launches to Sylhet for us. Muslim League workers were able to use them to campaign on behalf of Pakistan. This was necessary since we needed this particular form of transportation very badly. Mr. Shah was Mr. Sohrawardi's friend, and therefore he could not turn down his request. Mr. Shah is still in Pakistan. He had funded Mirzapur Hospital, Bharateswari Holmes Girls High School, and Kumudini College. Those institutions are thriving because of his patronage. So we returned to Calcutta after winning the Sylhet referendum. We found out then that a faction of the League had decided that Mr. Nazimuddin would contest Mr. Sohrawardi for the leadership of the Muslim League. The Central Muslim League had given instructions from Delhi that an election should be held for this position. Mr. I. Chandriga would preside over the election process on its behalf. But nobody seemed to have noticed that things were heating up over the division of resources between the two countries. Everyone was too preoccupied with the election. Mr. Nazimuddin left the country for London and Delhi after having accepted his nomination. Mr. Sohrawardi did all the work for staging the elections and raised the necessary funds. He wasn't able to rest for a day while holding the office of Prime Minister. He had got involved in everything: the riots in Calcutta, Noakhali, Bihar, Muslim League organizational work, and all the hectic activities going on in Delhi and Calcutta. And to think that when the time came to elect a leader, some people would consider someone else. Only posterity will be able to judge how unfair this was. Those who were opposing Mr. Sahrawadi harped on one theme. He was from West Bengal, and so how could he be the Prime Minister of East Pakistan? Mr. Sahrawadi had never thought in terms of two factions and had therefore nominated Mr. Nazimuddin's supporters and had made them ministers, parliamentary secretaries, the chief whip, the speaker, etc. And yet, these people were conspiring all the time to harm his interests. On the other hand, the West Bengal MLAs would not be able to vote for him since they were now part of a different state. And his own party was opposing him through a faction led by Mr. Hashim. Mr. Hashim said nothing to any of his men openly, but he secretly told many of them not to vote for Mr. Sahrawadi and even instructed some of them not to do so. But Mr. Sahrawadi was oblivious to all of these maneuverings. He was not going to do anything to thwart them. He wasn't even going to request anyone to vote for him. If he was requested to do something, he wouldn't say. If they want to, they will vote for me, and if they don't, they won't. What am I supposed to tell them? Muhammad Ali, Tafazal Ali, Dr. Malik, Sabu Khan, Anwara Khatun, Faridpur's Badshah Mia, and Rangpur's Khairat Hussain were among those working for Mr. Sahrawadi. But Mr. Mafizuddin Ahmed, the chief whip of his party, was working secretly for Mr. Nazimuddin. Mr. Shamsuddin Ahmed from Kushtia, a minister in his cabinet, too was trying to work up support for Mr. Nazimuddin. Only Mr. Fazlur Rahman, also a minister at this time, told Mr. Sahrawadi openly that he had no other option except to vote for Mr. Nazimuddin. I admired him for being so open about his preference. Nevertheless, despite all of them, there were more votes in favor of Mr. Sahrawadi than against him. However, 17 of the 19 MLAs of Sylhet arrived in Calcutta in time for the vote. When Dr. Malik had gone to Sylhet to campaign on Mr. Sahrawadi's behalf, they had asked him, "What exactly is Mr. Sahrawadi's program?" Dr. Malik had told them that the first thing Mr. Sahrawadi intended to do was abolish the feudal zamindari system. This had the opposite effect since except for 3 all Sylhet MLAs were zamindars. They were of course alarmed. They had been accommodated in Hotel Biltmore. We had been to Sealdah station to receive them and had taken them to the hotel. The Sylhet MLAs demanded that Mr. Sahrawadi set aside 3 ministerial positions for them. In reply, Mr. Sahrawadi said, "I will make no promises. You will get what you deserve." On the other hand, those campaigning on behalf of Mr. Nazimuddin had made a concrete offer to them. Except for a couple of them, all the Sylhet MLAs voted for Mr. Nazimuddin, and this led to Mr. Sahrawadi's defeat. At 2 a.m. on the eve of election day, I was at Mr. Sahrawadi's house and he was lying down in the veranda. Dr. Malik came and said, "We seem to be in bad shape. It might be a good idea to spend some money to alter the situation." Mr. Sahrawadi told him, "Malik, Pakistan has been achieved and I have no intention of polluting the sacred soil of the country by bribing anyone. I would rather not be the leader of the country by adopting underhand tactics. I have done what I was supposed to do." Mr. Malik said, "What you say is of course right, sir. We too hate such unfair means." From that day onward, I began to admire Mr. Sahrawadi even more. Mr. Sahrawadi is dead now, but Mr. Malik is still alive. Only the 3 of us were present during that conversation. I remember that we had informed Mr. Sahrawadi in the morning about how they had lured away our MLAs and kept them in Mr. Shahabuddin's house. We urged him to inform the Calcutta Muslim League so that we could all force them back, since they would not be able to withstand our combined strength. Mr. Safrawadi merely smiled and said, "There is no need for this. People will laugh. You are a bit too young and don't quite understand the situation." Calcutta was still experiencing riots. If he wanted to, he could have imposed a curfew and postponed the elections by a few days, since he was still the Prime Minister. But that he didn't do, which is proof that he was not hungry for power. He never believed that he should hold on to his position at any cost, and he certainly didn't believe in the politics of conspiracy. Pakistan's politics, however, began on a murky note. As long as Jinnah was alive, nobody dared to indulge in conspiratorial politics openly. But the day he died, such politics surfaced in the country. As soon as Mr. Nazimuddin was elected, the leader he declared that Dhaka would be the capital and returned to the city along with his men. He didn't think for a moment about the fate of the hapless Muslims of West Bengal. He didn't even bother to pay attention to the things we could claim from Calcutta as our fair share. As a consequence, we didn't get what was ours. Some government officials had got into fights and had claimed their share by force, and managed to load some goods on steamers and trains, and these constituted all we got as our share. If we had claimed our rightful portion in Calcutta, we wouldn't have lacked anything when we started out. Mr. Nazimuddin did not consult the Muslim League, or for that matter anyone else, declaring Dhaka the capital city. Doing so implied that we had no claims to Calcutta anymore. This left Lord Mountbatten with the problem of deciding what was going to be done about Calcutta. His dilemma had been described in the book Mission with Mountbatten. The British hadn't yet decided whether Calcutta would be part of Pakistan or remain in India. There was also the option of making it a free city if no solution could be found. The problem issued from the fact that Calcutta's Hindus and Muslims were at daggers drawn. At any time, the rioting could take a turn for the worse. Even if Calcutta was going to be part of India, there was a possibility that the area till Sialdah station would be part of Pakistan.
Thank you, Mahnoud. That was really well narrated. So when I initially wrote this, this was obviously, I wrote the program outline. I picked out the passages a week before, obviously, the US election. But, you know, I find that a lot of the things in the unfinished memoirs are really relevant to the present day. So, you know, in these paragraphs, we witness how factionalism, which is infighting for those, and within political parties, it can cause real conflict in politics. And there is talk of, you know, money controlling politics. And that's been something that has been a continuing problem for, I think, every country, especially, you know, there's been allegations of election fraud in our own country as well as other places of money really control which party wins. So it's believed that these days, you know, the richest political parties, the richest political figure is always going to inevitably win elections and inevitably sway the opinion polls. So why do you think that infighting exists within political parties? And do you think that it's inevitable for everybody who gets included and involved in politics, whether it's grassroots or right at the top, that they're going to be swayed by political agendas and money?
Well, the group or groups we're part of and identify with is a big part of how we define ourselves, even at a neurological level. As a result, most people in a group will prioritize the unity of the group and will go to alarming lengths to maintain it. This applies to any group. It doesn't have to be about anything subjectively important, as anyone who's upset, like any part of fandom, will know. So given all this, and the fact that political parties definitely do have very important functions and responsibilities, it should be most unlikely that members of political parties end up at each other's throats. But yet, clearly it isn't. There are many factors that influence the psychological unity of a group. Group size is one. If you have a group of, let's say, 10 people, It's much easier to all agree and achieve a sense of unity, and harder to get away with not contributing. Similarity of group members also contributes because people with similar experiences, backgrounds are, by and large, more likely to agree and empathize. How hard it is to join a group is also important. If you've gone through hell and back to be part of something, you're obviously going to be enthusiastic about keeping support and keeping it intact. In simple terms, organizational conflict, it alludes to the result of human interaction that starts when just one member of the organization discerns that his or her goals, values, or attitudes are incompatible with those of other members of the organization. The incompatibility in opinions can come into being within a member, two members, or between groups of the organization. So there are many factors like influencing the organizational conflict. One factor would be unclear responsibility. If there is a lack of clarity regarding who is responsible for which section of a task or a project, conflict will take place. And to avoid this situation, the roles and responsibility of the team members should be stated clearly and also agreed upon by all. Interpersonal relationship, that's another factor. Every member of an organization will obviously possess a different personality, which will play a crucial role in resolving conflict in an organization. Conflicts at the workplace are often caused by interpersonal issues between the members of the organization. Another reason could be just scarcity of resources. One of the main reasons for occurrences of conflict between the political parties could be the inadequacy of resources like time, money, materials, etc., due to which members of the organization will compete with each other, leading to conflict between them. And another factor would be conflict of interest. When there is a disorientation between the personal goals of the individual and the goals of the organization, conflict of interest will arise, as the individual may fight for his personal goals, which could overall hinder the success of the project. Conflicts will alleviate at the workplace due to individual and inter-individual factors. Individual related causes entails attitudes, beliefs, personality, orientation. Inter-individual conflict arises when the manager will breach the norms of the organization. So when you look at it like that, then you will see that when all these factors are put together, then it is inevitable that there will be infighting.
Yeah, that's so true. I think you made a really, really good point about sort of the collective and the individual, because I think you sort of addressed it, but also a lot of places, whether it's organizations, workplace, or anything like that. I think some workplace organizations, you get two kinds of groups of people where, one may want to hold on to the roots and hold on to what the original purpose was, whereas others want to evolve. And I think that's where a lot of the infighting comes in, because you've got one side that wants to hold on to the roots, hold on to what they believed 50 years ago, whereas another group realizes that we're going through change. And his name is Robert Greene. You won't have heard of him, but he said something really incredible on a podcast where he said a lot of the structures that we have these days are archaic. So the reason why our generation, so my age or your age, are, they're angry. We're angry, or we may be very frustrated with the way things are, is because we are still, what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring in new age thoughts and our ideas into structures that are way too archaic. And I think you made a really good point in terms of wherever organization may be, is we need to be comfortable with evolving with fast changing beliefs. And that's not to say we have to pander. I don't believe for 1 second you need to pander to make everybody happy, but you have to grow with your audience. You have to, I think that's where, for example, I'm going to bring up the Labour Party, because I think the biggest form of factionalism I've seen has been in the party, for example, the central one, not the local, where you've got two sides fighting. And you've got the side where it's more of the side where they're willing to evolve with their audience. And then you've got the side who are more senior, perhaps, who are very proud, and they should be, of where the roots of the Labour Party came from. And you've got those two clashing. So in relation to this, Mr. Sawadi is very different to a lot of the other political figures that Bongobondhuo comes across, where he openly, he consistently refuses to use politics in a very undermining way. He seems to be more heart-centered rather than someone maybe more of an opportunist. And that's not a bad thing, by the way. Being an opportunist is not a bad thing. It's how you use that, how you manifest that. So some might say that being someone who refused to use politics in an undermining way is a rare trait for someone in power. How can we follow, or do you think it's possible to follow Mr. Sawadi's example in showing integrity in everything that we do?
Yeah, it is definitely possible to keep the integrity, but you will have to follow many rules to yourself. Like, for example, you need to keep your word. If you want to establish a solid reputation, you must deliver on your promises without excuses and without a change of conditions. If you say yes, make sure it's a yes. If you say no, make sure it's no. You need to keep to your commitments. If you say you're going to be somewhere at this time, you need to be there at that time. If you think you're going to be late or suspect your prior appointment might run over, be sure that you notify. Being on time and where you say you're going to be says a lot about character. Letting people down by failing to show up or by having little regard for another's time is a surefire way to damage your reputation. You need to pay attention to your environment. Your environment leaves clues about your identity, and you can't afford to be messy, unkempt, and unprepared. Organization and cleanliness speaks volumes about integrity. The entire world is a spectator, and it pays to put your best foot forward at all times. You also need to stay focused. It is quite easy to get tempted by distractions and other opportunities screaming for attention, but it's important to stay focused on what's honest and true. If you're on a job and you stay focused on that job until you see the result you want, putting your all into something that draws admirers. You also should surround yourself with honest people. Surrounding yourself with these honest people offering solid character and a positive attitude is crucial. The people you employ with, the people that you are with, they should be really highly respected and they should be really good people. If you are with these really dodgy people that have been doing all these bad stuff all the time, then your own reputation will lower down. You also should take responsibility. Everyone makes mistakes, and this is true in both personal and the professional world. Showing integrity means admitting to these mistakes and not being afraid to say, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. Words can be powerful, but only if you back them up with actions. So to be integrous, you must work to prove your remorse.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. And I think a lot of people, what they don't realize is that how you show up in one aspect of your life is how you're going to show up in the rest of the aspect of your life. So if you're integral in, say, like you mentioned, if you say that you're going to be there at 6 p.m., you have to be there at 6 p.m. Because how you act in your career is going to be how you act in your relationships, how you're going to act in your ambitions and your purpose and your fitness or whatever aspect of your life you're trying to improve. And you made that really, really good point about how it really matters who you have around you. So if you have someone who's very undermining and wants to go the cheap way, like I said at the beginning, how Van Jones said, the CNN correspondent said, you can do it the cheap way, you can try and do it the easy way, but it's going to come back to hurt you. Karma's real. And also I think a lot of people, we kind of learn via the osmosis. So we are like sponges. So the people that you're around, you're going to subconsciously pick up things that they do. So if you're around someone who makes quite sarcastic or snide comments, or tells a white lie like every 30 minutes, tells a white lie quite often, you might start to pick up those things and you don't even realize you're doing it before it's too late, until it has to be so big that life has to really put something in, like hold a mirror to you and really show you how far you've come. I just want to say a big thank you before I forget to everyone who's been commenting. Please like, follow, share, and comment. It's been really great to see everyone champion Mahmoud as he's been speaking. Yeah, I really, really appreciate what you said there. I really appreciate sort of your thorough insight. I know you told me before that it's going to be a long one, but I really appreciate it because you've broke through it, and I love that you've brought in psychology into it, because human psychology fascinates me. So I really appreciate you said that, because group mentality really matters. And, we do have leaders and we have people that, we might follow, but a leader is only one person. It really matters how an entire group really comes together, if they do come together, Yeah, I really do appreciate that. So thank you, Mahmoud, for coming back. Obviously, you're one of our first guests, so I'm really chuffed that you came back. We'd love to have you more on again. So yeah, I'm going to move on to Afra now.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, Afra. How are you?
Hello, I'm fine.
Of course.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. This is obviously Afra's first time on the show, but I'm really grateful that she's chosen to be with us. She's been really great with us in terms of the preparation. Like her mom has been telling me everything, how she's been preparing for the show, so that makes me really happy. Afra, when you're ready, take it away with the narration.
Okay. Mission with Mountbatten also reveals to us that an Englishman did not want to come to Dhaka as the governor as the new province, since the city was supposed to be very hot in the summer. In a letter, Lord Mountbatten had responded to his decision thus: East Pakistan has one of the major hill stations of the world, and you will have no problem staying here. This indicates that Darjeeling was also supposed to be part of our share. But there, Mr. Nazimuddin's declaration had put paid to this. When he found out there was no possibility of any other disputes, Mountbatten took advantage of the situation and demarcated the boundary line so that Jasor's Muslim majority station of Bongobondhuo would become the southeastern border of East Pakistan. Even though Muslims constituted the majority in Nadia, he allotted Krishnanagar and Ranaghat Junction to them. Similarly, even though there were more Muslims than Hindus in Murshidabad, he gave the entire district to India. In Malda district, there were as many Hindus as Muslims, and so he divided it into half. But although Dinajpur had a Muslim majority, he cut Palurghat into two, so that Jalpaiguri and Darjeeling could go to India, and Assam could have a direct link with the rest of the country. All these districts really should have come to Pakistan. In the east, even though the referendum had been won in favour of Pakistan, the Muslim majority subdivision of Karimganj went to India. We had believed they would have to cede Kachar district in Assam as well as Sylhet, but this was not to be. I was especially saddened by the loss of Karimganj, since I had spent a lot of time there during the referendum. The lesson in all this is that if leaders make mistakes, people have to pay. We had given up willingly the Calcutta that had been built with the money derived from the people of East Bengal. I believe that this happened because some people in the Central League wanted Calcutta to go to India. In other words, they had agreed to give up the city even before being asked to do so. They knew that if Mr. Surawardi had been made the leader, this would have been difficult to accomplish, and so they achieved their goal by subterfuge. If Calcutta had become a part of Pakistan, the country would have no other option but to make the city its capital, since the people of East Bengal could claim that they constituted the majority, and since it was the most important city in the whole of India. Calcutta, after all, had been the capital of the whole of India during the early part of British rule. Some other incident happened at this time that are worth recalling. Mr. Hashim used to manage Millat Press, which the Muslim League owned. The future of the press had to be settled now. Mr. Hashim had found himself in debt previously, and had already sold one of its machines to clear his debts. He summoned Mr. Shamsul Haq from Dhaka and told him, "Many of the workers are going to move to Dhaka, but I don't want to move to Pakistan. Take the press with you and keep the team that has been running it, so that work can go on as before." Mr. Haq discussed the situation with us, and it was decided that the press would be reinstalled in the Muslim League office at 150 Mughaltuli, Dhaka. We would bring out the millat again, and each of us would be responsible for running a department of the press. Mr. Huck came to Dhaka to work out the details, and then returned to Calcutta. But when he returned, Mr. Hashim was singing a different tune. He now told the Calcutta workers, "Since you have decided to stay back in Calcutta, you will probably need to have the press here. How else are you going to survive in the city? Those who come from the part of Bengal that is now in Pakistan won't need to work in it, since that country is now a fact, and since they will be returning to it." The Calcutta workers said, "Yes, that's right." When Mr. Huck heard them say this, he returned to Dhaka without telling them anything. At that time, I wasn't seeing Mr. Hashim regularly. This This was because he didn't trust me, since he thought I was too much of a Surawardi supporter. For my part, I did not like the way he had behaved with Mr. Surawardi. As far as I was concerned, he had behaved treacherously with him. One day, Mr. Nuruddin, Nurul Alam, and Qazi Idris asked me to meet them in Bengal restaurant, which was close to where I lived. I asked them what they were up to. They told me something unfortunate has happened. Mr. Hashim is planning to sell the press. Since we have built it through subscription, how can we face the public and tell them what has happened? I said, what can I do? All of them told me that I would have to oppose him. I said, why should I try to oppose him? I'm going back to Pakistan. I have no idea when I'll be coming back to Calcutta again. Why should I bother? You were all Mr. Hashim's cronies, and you had all struck my name off from your list a long time back. So why should I do anything now? They said in unison, if you tell him, he won't dare to sell the press. I told them then, okay, I will request him not to. The next day, I went to Millet Press to meet Mr. Hashim. My colleagues were in the next room, listening intently to our exchange. I began by addressing him gently. I said, I believe you are going to sell the press. He replied, what is that to do? It's running at a loss every month, and in any case, who will run it now? I said, Kondakan Nurul Alam has run it all this time as manager. If you are trying to sell it to cut your expenditure, how will the workers survive? And how will we be able to show our faces to people again? We raise subscriptions from the whole of Bengal for the press. If we sell it now, everyone is going to slander us. Mr. Hashim burst out suddenly. I will have to sell it off anyhow, for who's going to pay its debts? I said, you sold part of it a few months back. Didn't you get enough then to pay off the debts? He was angry by this time, but I was angry too. When I left him, I told him I would thwart any attempt of his to sell off the press, and I would ensure that no one came up with any offer to buy it. Mr. Hashim was really upset at this. The next day, my friends in the press came and told me, Mr. Hashim has stopped eating. The only thing he keeps saying is, Mujib has insulted me. Please go and meet him again and tell him that he should do what he feels right. I told him, are you joking? I was meeting Mr. Surawardi regularly then. Sometimes I would accompany him to meetings, especially the ones organized to restore communal harmony. I narrated to him one day everything that happened between Mr. Hashim and me. He became upset. Why had I been rude to Mr. Hashim? This shows how forgiving a man he was. I went back to Mr. Hashim and apologized to him. I said I shouldn't have talked to him the way I did. I told him, do what you feel is best. I really shouldn't be saying anything. Mr. Hashim was going to stay back in India, while I was going away to Pakistan, where my home is, in any case. Mr. Hashim was pleased because I had apologized to him. I might have had a difference in opinion with him, but it was difficult for me to forget what he had taught me, and that he had taught me the basics of politics. If I had been mistaken, or if I had done wrong, I have never had any difficulty in acknowledging my mistake. I would correct it. After all, we all make mistakes. I had another flaw. I would flare up on occasions, but I would cool down quite quickly too. I've noted that there are many people who keep thinking about what they should do. They procrastinate so much that before they know it, the time for doing anything is over, and they can never do what they wanted to do. These people keep vacillating between should I and shouldn't I, and never manage to accomplish anything. When I decide on doing something, I go ahead and do it. If I find out I was wrong, I try to correct myself. This is because I know that only doers are capable of making errors. People who never do anything make no mistakes.
Thank you, Afra. That was incredible narration. Obviously, you were too busy reading, but the comments were going crazy while you were reading, really encouraging. So people are really impressed by how you read. And also, I just want to say, I know the comments came up, but it's also Afra's mum's birthday. So on Afra's behalf, I'll say happy birthday to her. So, you know, there's two parts of this passage that I found really interesting. The first is the subject of free press, which is what we'll go into. And, you know, we witnessed in these paragraphs how journalistic integrity is so key in sustaining positive social change, as we've seen in our time and as we've seen in the unfinished memoirs. So I personally believe, you know, I've had a lot of experience in journalism now, that journalism has almost lost its way. I think originally, you know, journalism was really about the truth, and newspapers are now more consistent with, you know, are more focused on getting clicks and getting reads and getting views, rather than holding public figures accountable for their actions. So the motivation is more money and reputation rather than the truth. So As the passage speaks about free press, why do you think that it's so important to hold public figures accountable to the truth? And how does journalistic integrity really serve ordinary people?
Well, I think it's important for us, the common public, to know about the government, their policies and everything. Like, this is democracy. In this democratic world, public figures or state figures or political leaders should let the public know what they're doing. And like they should let us know what they're doing if it's
Take your time.
So Mujib there, he acknowledged that he was wrong, and he even said sorry to Mr. Hashim. So I think that's public figures should tell the public the truth, like what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that you made really good points. I think, like as you said, there needs to be almost a connection, as you've relayed, that there needs to be a connection between public figures and the general public, us. I think it's really easy to get lost in that. And you made a really good point about that, which I really appreciate. And, Bongobondhuo really open, like you said, so you've already gone into what we said, but that's great. So Bongobondhuo, he writes openly about his honesty towards himself. He speaks about how he makes mistakes. He's unafraid about losing them. Afraid about doing mistakes. Fear of failure, humiliation can really hinder our ability to grow as human beings. And I think, as you said just previously, I think that really stops the level of honesty between public figures and their people. And it's really refreshing, as you've related to see a public figure be honest about his own mistakes and show that failure and success really go hand in hand. In what ways do you think mistakes are beneficial for our growth? And how can we become more open towards making mistakes?
So we all make mistakes, and if we make mistakes, we know the consequences. Like, we've experienced the consequences, so we know that we shouldn't really do it again. And we shouldn't really hide the mistakes, because that will just make it worse. We have to acknowledge that we made them, just like Bongobondhuo did there in the extract.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think also, like you've just said, being really honest about them and opening up about mistakes, I think it helps a lot of people relate to that person. I think it's really easy for us to see, public figures, historical figures on a pedestal, and we can't relate to them. I know when I was younger, like, I would hear all these stories about all these famous Bangladeshi figures. I didn't really relate to them in any way, or see them in any light, and almost it was quite intimidating to hear all these stories growing up and thinking, can our generation, can I really live up to that sort of memory that we're living with, our parents are living with? So for him to openly talk about that, and I loved what he said, and you read it out well, where making mistakes means that you're a doer. If you're not making mistakes, then you're not doing anything. And I love that you said that, and I love that you made a point on that, because by making mistakes, you mentioned consequences, and I appreciate that, because then okay, this didn't work. And mistakes don't have to be mistakes that hurt people. They can be mistakes that just don't work. Whatever you were planning to do, it doesn't work. Then at least okay, path A didn't work, but path B might, or path C might, rather than being like, well, I made the mistake, I'm going to give up, So yeah, I really appreciate your honest opinions on there and thought-provoking insights about mistakes. It's very easy for us to get scared about failure and get scared about sort of the obstacles that might come across success. Overnight success is not beneficial to our growth whatsoever. If you're not learning, then you're not doing well, right? And I really appreciate that. And I also just want to take a second to acknowledge Afra for doing this. It is so nerve-wracking not that you seem like it can be so nerve-wracking to do this, and I just want to praise my young talents. And I do this, I'm always in awe of my young talents every time I do this show, because I was not doing this at the age Afra was doing. At year 8, I was most definitely not doing shows, and I most definitely was not putting myself out there. So I want to take a moment to acknowledge Mahnun, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge Afra and be grateful towards them to coming on this show, because, you know, when you're younger, you're either the kind of person that, those kids that are so brave and they'll do everything, and then you've got the kids that really, with time, they get less and less confident. But it's really brave and courageous to do a show like this. So I really appreciate this, and I know that there's going to be someone your age who's watching this and is going to be so inspired, might be an exaggeration, but they're going to be very grateful that they're seeing someone like them on the screen. So I'm very grateful to the both of you for coming on this show. And that ends our Young Talent segment. And now we're going to be moving on to our senior guest, Mr. Kamal Qureshi, who is our political analyst and has had great experience in community society activism. Mr. Qureshi, how are you?
Thank you very much. I'm fine. And it was nice to hearing from two talents.
I'm sure you've been enjoying this.
Yeah, it was really interesting to hear from
definitely.
them, and really interesting them finding their own interest in Bongobondhuo and his model of leadership, which is really encouraging for our younger generation, particularly when our younger generation are not born or raised back home in Bangladesh. They're born and raised in a different country, different culture, and away from our heritage and history. And I think, Sajuti, you're doing a great job to integrate all these things to our new youngster born and brought up or raised in this country. Thank you. Yeah. Can you hear me?
They inspire me every time. I'm always, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay.
And go ahead when you're ready.
So I came away to Dhaka. A huge meeting was organized in Barisal. Mr. Sharwati stayed with Mr. Nazimuddin whenever he was in Dhaka, and he did do this time too. We headed for Barisal in a steamer. Calcutta's Parafula Chandra Ghosh had accompanied him on this trip. The Barisal meeting started in the afternoon. When I was about to address the meeting, around 8 p.m., someone handed me a slip of paper. I was sitting near to Mr. Sarwardi. Mr. Rob, my brother-in-law, had scrawled on the slip the following message: "Your father is very ill and close to death. They have been trying to reach you for a while now. If you want to meet him, you will have to head home by night time." Helen, the another younger sister, has already left. I read out the message to Mr. Sarwardi. He ordered me to leave for home immediately. I took my leave from him. When I got down from the dais, I found out that Mr. Rob was waiting to receive me. He said, "When did you get my message?" I replied, "Yesterday evening." He told me, "Helen has left already and I have been waiting to accompany you." I headed directly from the station to the dock to take a steamer since it was leaving in half an hour time. If I missed it, I would have to wait for the next steamer, which would leave the next evening. I boarded the steamer. The whole night I kept thinking of all sort of things. I was the eldest son of my father. I did not know much about running the family. I kept thinking of my thoughtlessness and the many ways in which I had hurt my father. But he had never rebuked me. All fathers have loved their sons, and all sons love and respect their fathers. But I am unable to express the extent of my father's love for me and the love I felt for him. In the morning, the steamer reached Patagati station, which was only 2.5 miles away from our home. I asked the station master and a few other people in the station if they had heard anything about my father. They all said the same thing. He is very ill because it would take a long time to reach home by boat. I left my luggage with the station master and decided to walk home. I had to cross the Madhumati river. I decided to head home through the fields, not bothering to stick to the roadways. It did not matter to me that I was walking through paddy fields. When I come home, I found that my father was suffering from cholera. He was in a bad shape and the doctor had given up on him. As soon as I called out Abba, he opened his eyes and looked at me. A few teardrops trickled down his face. I broke down in tears. Suddenly, he seems to show more sign of life. The doctor now said he appeared to be breathing better. Soon his condition took a turn for the better. The doctor told us then that we had no more reason to worry. He had stopped urinating, but now he was passing water after a long time. He was beginning to look better too. The worst seems to be over. A little later, the doctor declared, "You have no more reason for worry since he has started to pass urine again." 2 or 3 hours later, the doctor said that he would leave since he had stayed back for the night. He reassured us that there was no danger and that he would visit us again in the evening. I stayed back in our village home for a few more days. My father's condition began to improve steadily. Children who are deprived of their parents' affection are the most reached people of the earth, and who can be more fortunate than children who have the blessing of their parents.
Hi all. Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Qureshi. Just a warning to our audience and my participants that I am coming across technical problems. So if I do leave out, then I'm coming back in. Just be patient. It looks like today is going to be one of those days, but we'll get through this. We'll get through this. It's just a hazard of doing shows like this. So thank you very much to Mr. Qureshi for that incredible narration. So this passage is very different to the ones that Maknun and Afra read. You know, this passage is very heartfelt. We're familiar with Bongobondhuo's close relationship with his father. This is something that that is evident throughout the book. And for his father to see his son's presence and that to give him strength in recovery was really beautiful for me. I believe that their relationship can serve as an example on how a healthy relationship between a parent and a child can exist. Many relationships between a parent and a child can fall apart because there is constant tension between the two. But Bongobondhuo's father grants him, independence and faith in what he does. So what factors do you believe influence the relationship between a parent and a child? And why do you believe that there's tension between the younger and older generation?
I think it's very, I mean, the relationship between parent and child. Sorry.
It's fine. It's
Can you
fine.
hear
We're
me?
having one of those
Yeah.
days.
Yeah, okay. And the relationship or healthy relationship between parent and child has been very important from the right beginning of the civilized society or human beings. Yeah. I think what is important that, and the first thing is that forming a connection between parent and children is very important, and also its gradual development of this relationship is very important for a healthy relationship between parent and children. Uh, Obviously, Bongobondhu and his father relationship has been very positive, and there has been a good gradual development of a trust, and there has been a very transparent relationship, and there has been a gradual uh, allowances of independence as well. So those are the things helped really in terms of forming relationship. So I think it's very important nowadays in our life, particularly when we are living in a different society, when the gap between generations, younger generation and older generation, gap between our parent is far greater than when we raise our children in back home in our own culture. So I think what is more important thing is that this relationship needs to be forming and developing in a gradual way from the right beginning, and it needs to be earned in a gradual process. For example, we need to have, as a parent, we need to have enough. Sorry,
It's fine.
can you hear? Can you see me? I lost, I think.
No, I can hear you. I can see you. Your
Can you
camera
hear?
might
But
be
I cannot.
frozen. Yeah, I can hear you.
I can't. I can't see anything.
You may have to leave and come back in. Leave and come back in. It's fine. We've got time.
Yeah, it's okay now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think
Thank you to everyone for.
what we need to do. Yeah, what we need to do. I mean,
Yeah.
we as a parent and need to take lead in terms of engaging our children in our day-to-day life. And for that, we need to do lots of activities really with them, which means that very simple things. We need to allow our time to spend with our children. We need to be playing with them in a very simple, ordinary way, in a friendly way as well. We need to have time for laughing together. We need to have time together to play together. We need to have time for nurture the bonding as well. So I think and talk to each other and be transparent, honest, and and open really with our children. And children should feel that they're welcome and allowed to share their feelings, to share their anxieties, to share their aspirations with their parents in a friendly way, and communicate in a friendly way. So those are the things I think most important thing, and listen them to actively communicate with them really. And once we make those things on a regular basis, I think relationship can be bonding in a very positive way.
Yeah. And in relation to, as you said, the transparency and sort of the gradual positive development. What advice would you give to maybe any parent who's watching who may have struggling relationships with their children, about how to reach out to their children in a positive way? These days it's very difficult to do that. And how do you follow Bongobondhuo and other example in fostering a loving, fulfilling relationship?
Yeah, it's the same. The advice would be that I think what we need to that we need to be always available for our children, and this is for their aspirations to share with us. This is for their anxiety or tension to share with us. Yeah, and we should be available for mentoring them, fostering them, supporting them. Yeah, and there will be always differences in terms of thinking, in terms of thinking and activities as well, between older generation and younger generation. But I think ongoing dialogue and creating an atmosphere that children feel comfortable to talk with their parents is most important thing. So they might go because the childhood, teenage time, and early adulthood is a very difficult, changing time for everybody in India. So they go through different changes of life in terms of their thought, in terms of their pressure and relationships, in terms of their thinking what they need to do, in terms of the challenges they take, really, in terms of those that I think is as a parents we need to facilitate an environment for our own children, for them to feel more comfortable to share things with parents. It could be serious things, it could be very simple things, but they need to feel really comfortable to share as a friend, as a father, as a mother. Yeah, they need to talk with them, and parents need to be more available, more listening, and more transparent in terms of what their expectation, what their behaviors in terms of so those are the things really important for any advice to parents. But obviously, is what I find is that because and also we as a parent need to accept to an extent that there will be a time then we need to allow our children, like Bangabandhu was given by their parents, yeah, an independence and to take some risk in life, to take some challenges in life, to take some because challenges are also important for children to grow further, children to really going further. So it's not always that they will always be correct and their action always be correct. There will be a chances of taking mistakes. There will be a chances of taking some risk, and there will be some consequences for that. But I think most important is making mistake in life, taking challenges in life is a part of life for growing. And we as a parent need to work with them, support them, and really accept any mistakes or failures and learn from there for future learning, for future growing. And this is the way we can mentor our younger generation and allow them that look, this is your time and you can be more creative, you can be more challenging, you can be more taking leadership in life. And leadership is not always risk free. It's very challenging thing. Bongobondhu took a challenge in his life. He was not always available for his parents' needs. or even his father's illness, he was far away from him. But he came back because bonding was such a good and solid and positive. And he came back. When he came back, his father felt more positive, and he was coming out of illness and feeling more better physically and mentally. And those are the things, positive things. The foundation was there. So I think this is as a parents we need to, particularly when we are living in a different community, different society, different culture, and the generation and the gaps are so much different culturally between us as the older generation and our younger generation. So you have to be more accommodating, more available, more listening, and more active and engaging with them. And those are the things I think we need to be mindful as a parents. And the most important thing, I think, our role is to be a mentor for them. And I think this is the other thing, is that we need to be aware that sometimes we may face a challenge in our life, and it is normal in life to have challenges, to go further.
Yeah, yeah. I think you've summed it up perfectly. I was trying to think like how can I follow up with that? You said it perfectly. And especially really important that we've had you two talents here who are, listening to this, but I'm sure there's many parents that have taken this on. I want to say a big thank you to everyone who was commenting while Mr. Qureshi was doing his narration and his insights. And I think before I move on to our last senior guest, who's been waiting very patiently, thank you, backstage for us. But it was a really special episode, so I didn't want to cut into anyone's time. I think you, like Afra said, you have to be willing to make mistakes. And I think what parents and children need to understand is that you're both sides are going to make mistakes. Children are going to make mistakes, parents are going to make mistakes. And I think the biggest myth that we need to get rid of is the idea that our parents know everything. And I don't mean that they don't know everything. What I mean by that is we expect our parents to have it all figured out while we're growing up. But really what I've learned, especially me and my parents, like, so Bongobondhuo and his father had a very bonded relationship. But me and my parents, for example, I can honestly say like 5 years ago, we weren't where we are today. We've had a very healing process with our relationship. But the biggest game changer for our relationship was understanding that my parents were just doing the best they were as time was going on. And to expect them to know everything at every instant is just unrealistic. But it's the same pressure that's on children. We expect our children to know everything, have everything perfected, when really we're human beings. Your parents are not going to have every box ticked. They are human beings. They are learning. They are making mistakes. They are failing. They are succeeding, just as children are. And once we recognize that, as you said, and you have a space where you can just be friends and you can honestly just be honest with each other and be champions for each other, and realize that mistakes don't make you evil. They make you flawed human beings, but that's what everyone is. So I'm very grateful to Mr. Qureshi for his insights. I was really happy that he was the one who was doing this aspect of the show. I thought I really wanted to end it on such a heartfelt note, especially because I know there's so many parents watching this. There's parents of our young talents watching this, as well as cousins and uncles. So I want to say a big thank you to my guests, Mafnoon, Afra, and Mr. Kamal Qureshi. And I'm just going to, I know we're going way over time, so I just want to thank everyone who has stayed to watch this. I really wanted this to be a really special one because I'm in the midst of such great change. So my final guest, who's been waiting very patiently backstage for us, and I want to say a big thank you to him for coming on, is Dr. Kazi Rahman Mukul, who is the advisor of the Bangabhondo Sangskritik Jote, UK. Dr. Rahman, thank you so much for waiting backstage. I can imagine it was some time, but I hope that you've been enjoying our program. I hope you've been enjoying all the young talents, as well as Mr. Qureshi's incredible insight as the senior guest.
Thank you very much. It is a very lovely program. Yeah. I enjoyed it extremely well.
Thank you. Yeah.
And this is one of the unforgettable evening for me. This is particularly children born in this country. They are showing their love for their motherland, Bangladesh, and also showing their love for the father of the nation, Bongobondhuo Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. This is excellent and wonderful and unbelievable. What it shows, it shows how they are developed. It shows from young age what they have learned about the country, how they have learned about the father of the nation, who has served most of his young life in jail, in prison, and then he was killed with all his family members except 2 daughters who are not in the country. It is a very emotional evening for all Bengalis, including me. I must congratulate them and also congratulate their parents. It shows that their parents have given them insight about Bangabandhu and Bangladesh, and they have grown up in that basis. Now I am going to the part of the book, Unfinished Memoirs of Bongobondhuo. It shows the early part of Pakistan creation and 1946-47, that sort of time. And also it expresses and shows how he feels about his father and parents. This is a great teaching for us. We know very well that Bongobondhu never lied. He was very honest, open. What he felt, he expressed, and that has led him up to this stage. He was, from his young life, if you know the history, from his very young life, school life, college life, he was very honest and always leader, and what he felt, he always expressed. And here in his writing, he has mentioned the events, what was going on during the part of division of India into Pakistan and Bangladesh. He has vividly expressed how the Pakistanis, West Pakistanis, has betrayed East Pakistan. If they have not betrayed and they stayed honest, then the map of Bangladesh will be different, which Bongobondhu has mentioned as well in his memory. Huge part of India, Bengal, Assam, we have lost. And Bengal could be different, and Calcutta will be the capital of Pakistan. Calcutta will be the capital of Bangladesh. That we knew from early life that this exactly happened because of the conspiracy, because Pakistanis rose that if Calcutta was part of Bangladesh, Karachi will not be the capital, Calcutta will be the capital. So they gave everything to English and Indian, whatever they say, take it. He never said no. So that is the part. And then he has expressed the leadership at that time. The leadership at that time, there is a different type of people. They were mad after Pakistan. They had a lot of love for Pakistan, but they forgot that they are Bengali as well. But Bongobondhu did not forget. And Sorordi was not a Bengali Indian, but he is pro-East Pakistani, pro-Bangladeshi. He lived in Bangladesh. He has died and he was buried in Bangladesh. That shows his greatness. And Bongobondhu, in mid 40s to late 40s in India, worked with him for a long time, very closely even during the riot of before the division of India. And after Bangladesh, East Pakistan was established, and they came to Bangladesh. They know very well there's a conspiracy to make Urdu as the only state language. And before these leaders reached Bangladesh, at that is Pakistan, they held a meeting in one of the hotel in Calcutta. Before coming to Pakistan, Dhaka, and they decided that Bengali will be one of the state languages of Bangladesh. That is East Pakistan. And in around December 47, there was a special meeting by Tamaddan Tamanus, what will be the state language of Pakistan. And from there, the movement slowly grew and took its shape. And then we have seen what happened in 1952, and people were killed, they lived, they gave their life for Bangla language. And it is well known all over the world, Bengali is the nation who gave life for their language. Bongobondhuo then.
Yeah, and I think it's, yeah.
Then Bongobondhuo then forwarded further, and he was in jail all the time during the Bengali language movement. He was in the jail. Then after that, he was always in the jail. 62, I first met him in Khulna. He was in the meeting with Sorowardi and re-establishing his political field again after coming out of jail. But every week, every month, he was arrested and put in jail and released again. This was the way they were try to keep them under control, both Sorowardi and Sheikh Mujib. They worked together very hard. Then we see the creation of Bangladesh and his leadership quality. He did not leave the country. He stayed because he believed that if he leaves Dhaka, then there was a huge massacre of population in Dhaka and Bangladesh. Then Pakistan was forced to release him. They knew that they have lost the game. And I want to mention here that before he did all this, already he and his government made an arrangement with India to support our struggle. It is well known.
Yeah.
Then what we are seeing is, it is very sad that when you try to give people his feeling, what he feel about the people, what he felt about the people, he used to say, all are my children. He used to see everybody as a child. There was about 300,000 women was raped and made pregnant. And in our society, their parents even will not, was shameful for this, will not take their name. Bongobondhuo lecture openly said, if you need your father's name, put my name, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, as your father. Don't forget that. What sort of feeling he had for the population of Bangladesh. That's why we love him so much. That's why we do everything for him. And we, for this year, throughout the year, we are celebrating his 100th birthday. But we feel very sad that he was killed. He was killed by whom? He was killed. There's a lot of story. I don't want to go there in the story, but it's a sad time for Bangladesh. And you have seen his daughter, what she is doing. If Bongobondhuo was present, he was not dead, Bangladesh will go further ahead, because of mismanagement between his death and Hasina came to power. Bangladesh was ruled by a group of dishonest people. They did not thought about general population. They did not wanted people to live as a decent person, have good food, good housing, good education. Nothing they thought about it except themselves. What you have seen in Bangladesh now. What Sheikh Mujib thought and dreamt about Bangladesh. All will be educated. All will have their clothing. All will walk with their shoes. All will have their food. All will have their house. Sheikh Mujib's daughter is making house for poor people who are landless, who has no house, who are like sleeping in the street. This is the way the state should be, because a country is for the people. And Bongobondhuo believed that a country is for the people, and he believed that, and that is the reason, one of the reasons he was killed. And the killer has not got very far away. They are in the history, they are in the dustbin. And Bongobondhu's name is throughout the world. His daughter's name is throughout the world. Bangladesh is no more poor country. Nobody can say Bangladesh is poor. Industrial development is huge. About Bangabhondo, there are so many books all over the world written in different languages. You will not believe it. In different languages. In African country, they have fought against colonialism in the name of Bangabhondo Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. How the Bangladesh was built, created. So this is the part we must not forget about Bangabhondo. You will not find a leader like him. I was fortunate to see him 3 times face to face. He was wonderful. I was a medical student. I went to see him in the parliament. At the end, we had 3 there. He told our health minister, "Oh, student has come from medical school. Take them to next room and give them sweet. You know, the Indian sweet." He has offered. There's no need for that. But he's that sort of person.
Yeah.
So you go there, you can touch his body even. He is no different. You don't need any permission. Like you just walk in. You want to shake Mujibur Rahman, you want to see, just walk in. You don't need any permission or anything or wait for hours and hours. That was his way of life. He's a wonderful person. Then he showed his love for his parents. Like any other parent and children, he showed his expression, his emotion, which is wonderful. And that is a teaching for us. That is a good teaching, how a family should be, how a father should be, how a children should be. And that is a great teaching for us as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Dr. Rahman, I'm going to have, as much as I'm going to have to stop there just because of the timing. I wanted you to keep talking. I was really enjoying it. Like, you know, we've been going on for a very long time. So I'm very grateful. Thank you so much. But you made incredible good points. And I love that you talked about Bongobondhu's character, because it goes back to my original point. I hope to God I'm not like buffering here, but anyway, we're getting there. We're getting to the end. But as I said, you know, character matters. Bongobondhuo was a really good man, and being a good man, good woman, good, you know, whatever you identify as, really, really matters, because he didn't play cheap. He didn't undermine people. He always had very heart-centered politics, and you can try and play cheap as much as possible, but people will not remember you. They will not remember you. We are still talking about Bongobondhuo to this day. People are going to keep talking about Sheikh Hasina for like 100 years. There's going to be books about her. There's going to be books about his family. There might be even books about Afra. There might be books about Mahmoud. You don't know, but I really, really love that we've got a platform here of such, you know, forward-thinking people that really, really want to make a change. And I'm so excited to see what my young talents, our young talents do in the future. You know, I think in 5 years, 10 years, we're going to hear their names in big lights. So I just want to say a big thank you again to Mahnoon Afra, Mr. Kamal Qureshi, and Dr. Rahman Mukul for staying on for an hour and a half. That's incredible. But it's been a very special episode. And I just want to say a big thank you to everyone. And I also want to say thank you to everyone who liked, commented, shared. If you're still watching, you're brilliant. Thank you for sharing on Facebook and YouTube, wherever platforms you've been watching from. I want to say a big thank you to the Mukti online channel and BD for showcasing us, and the Bangabhondo Sangskritik Jote London branch for producing this day in, day out. Technical guidance support from National Islam Mujib, who has been brilliant throughout. I know that we've had some bufferings and stuff and technical problems, work. I think all our devices are reaching their like life's end right now, trying to keep up with the stream. But thank you very much for your patience, and I want to say a big thank you to all my participants. And from me, from everyone here, a big thank you. An incredible Sunday. We're coming into a new age, people. 2020 is nearly over, but I think I'm feeling very good about the future, and I'm very grateful that I'm British Bangladeshi. I'm very grateful that I have such a rich heritage that I come from, and to have books like the Unfinished Memoirs and Bongobondhuo's example to walk in. So thank you, everyone. Have an incredible Sunday, and I will see you for the next episode. Take care now. Bye.